Can you see my screen, sir?
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good morning to all of you. Good morning to all of you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Good
sir.
morning, sir.
Yes, sir. Good morning. So it's a great pleasure and honor for me to introduce our session 10 speaker, Dr. Rajesh Kannan. Before inviting Dr. Rajesh, I will present a brief introduction about Dr. Rajesh. Dr. Rajesh is presently working as assistant professor at Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, Amrita School of Engineering, Amrita Vishwavidyapeeth University, Kollam, Kerala. He did his BTech in Electronics and Communication Engineering in 1997, College of Engineering, Anna University. He did his master's in VLSI in 2010 from Amrita School of Engineering, Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham, Amritapuri, campus, Kerala. He did his PhD in 2015 from Amrita School of Engineering, Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham, Amritapuri, campus, Kerala. He has presented more than 160 papers in various reputed journals, international conferences, etc. Uh, Presently, he is the director of uh, Humanitarian Technology Labs, assistant professor, Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, program chair IEEE Robot Swam 2017, program chair IEEE Symposium on Education Technology and Entrepreneurship in 2015, student branch counselor IEEE Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham SP, advisor IEEE Robotics and Automation Society, Industrial Electronics Society, Educational Society, Signal Processing Society and Computer Society, and so on. He is having so many interdisciplinary positions at institute level and at the national and international level. He is having so many laurels in his name, and he is presently working on following projects: Mudra, that is the gesture-based wheelchair; Selfie, that is self-driving wheelchair; Peripresa, that is the search and rescue robot; Parichaya, that is the service robot; Paricharya, service robot; Suraksha, that is IoT crop protection system; COVID robot army, robot for food and drug delivery; UV disinfection, transportation of patients, public awareness; and self-driving car project, Natarthi. So now I would invite Dr. Rajesh to unfold his presentation. First, he will discuss about Dr. Rajesh. He will discuss about first sensors and actuators, then the entrepreneurial opportunities in robotics. Right, sir?
Yeah, entrepreneurial robotics. I think that itself is going to take quite some time. So that is
Right.
how I have designed. Briefly, I will discuss about the sensors while the video demo of the projects.
Right, sir. Right, sir.
Yeah.
Right. So, Dr. Rajesh, please.
Thank you, Professor Tiwari, for that very good introduction. I take this opportunity to thank Professor Tiwari and NIT Allahabad for inviting me to deliver this lecture on entrepreneur opportunities in robotics. So let us start with some introduction to our lab. All right. So what I'm going to do in this lecture is that, all right, so it's like how we started two startups from the humanitarian technology labs, the research lab at Amrita. All right, so the presentation would be based on this core theme, and also I would give various video demonstrations of several robots that we developed, and they are all ready for marketing as a product. Right. So in the course of time, I will discuss, if time permits, briefly about some of the sensors that are used in these robots. Right. So this is about the lab overview. Right. So we are focusing on robotics, healthcare, human-aided devices, embedded systems, and it was formally established in 2012. So we also strongly promote undergraduate research. So that is one of the uniqueness of the robo of the lab, and we encourage undergrad students to take part in all these humanitarian projects. So they realize the need to help the people. Right. So we see so many students building projects. Well, that is good. They gain some experience, but when they work on humanitarian projects, they realize how much people are suffering, how much their knowledge can help these people, right? And because of this, there are several significant research projects that came out of this, starting from Amaran, an unmanned robotic coconut tree climber and harvester, a Mudra, a gesture-based wheelchair, Selfie, self-driving wheelchair. So these are all the list of projects that Professor Tiwari already listed while introducing me. So we are going to see how each of these projects are built, and then what is the current situation of these projects. And also you can see there are about more than 600 undergraduate researchers who have contributed to all these projects listed till date. And this year there are about 52 undergraduate researchers in our lab. And more than 160 research papers. This significant amount of this came from the contribution by the bachelor students. And also they were able to raise a funding of about 50,000 US dollars, right, from IEEE alone for almost many of these projects listed here. And the significant achievement is the two startups that came out that were funded by Amrita TBI, looking into the prospect of making some of these projects as a product. There is another reason also that we encourage this startup, because all these projects are some way or other going to help the people. But if it's at a research level, it is never going to reach people. And to take it to people, you need some money, right? So for that, you need some investment. The government can provide some funding, but not for a startup and promoting product. But nowadays, even the government of India, through various programs and challenges and competitions, are supporting a lot of startup activities among the students. That is a very, very significant thing that I have noticed in this past 5 years or maybe 6 years. That is a very good thing that is happening with the government of India, right? Because I am in this field for more than 15 years, and when I started as an academician in 2004, that is when I joined Amrita University, the state of robotics was really, really pathetic in India. We have to accept the fact, right? Because, right, the main factor is the cost, right? Well, I was a VLSI engineer in US. For 6 years, I was working in various companies in Bay Area, California, before I joined Amrita in 2004. So in all these companies, I had the opportunity to work with the hardware, particularly the FPGA boards that I used to test my RTL level, Verilog code or VHDL code, right? So this gave me a lot of confidence to venture into hardware, because unlike software, right, which you can easily work on some algorithm. You don't need a big setup. You don't need an oscilloscope, power supply. You don't need to deal with multimeters and other stuff. Hardware is not so easy to make it successful, right? People who have worked in the hardware know this well, right? But being in the industry for more than 7.5 years, I got this confidence to start with to work with the hardware. Right, so that is another thing that we do at the Hut Lab, right? It's all hardware. Everything we do is related. Well, we need a software to work for the hardware. There is a software team working for all these projects, but the major part is the hardware design, including the electronics, the mechanical design, electrical, all these stuff. Right. So 15 years back, when I look back, the state of robotics, right, was not so good in India. There were little automation here and there in some industry. That too around 2010 only that I came to know. Right. And also the promoting robotics among universities, that was really dull. Right. So that when I thought of building a robo like 10 years back, I need certain sensors, right? But these sensors are not available in India. That is the first thing. They were not available at that time. And you need to make your own sensor system in order to build this robo. So I have to drop the project because of the huge cost involved in importing some of these sophisticated sensors. But now, if you look at the sensors and the actuators that are required for building a robo, they are very easily available and they are also very cheap to buy. So that is one of the significant changes that I have found out. Right, and even the students can afford buying these sensors and actuators to build a very advanced robo. Right, but of late, the government of India has started supporting a lot of, like encouraging many entrepreneurs, significantly among the students to take up the entrepreneurship and build their own startup. Right. So that is quite a significant change, and that is one of the things that we do at the Hut Labs. So we got like 2 startups so far, a worth of like more than 1 crore rupees of funding. So this is the current team, like of more than 50 students at Hut Labs. You can see majority of them, 95% of them are bachelor students. Right. Now, if you look at the robotic industry, right, worldwide is a $1 trillion business. Whereas in India, because of various support from the government and so many people started with the building robots, it has become a $1 billion industry in India itself. Right. So the few reasons are listed here. Building robots are cheaper than ever. As I mentioned, the sensors that were like 20,000, 30,000 or 50,000 that you have to import from outside the country are like available for few thousands of rupees or even lesser than thousands of few hundreds of rupees. Now there is a big change in which the control method of the robo that can be enhanced using smartphones. Even you can fix a smartphone in a robo and operate the robo, because the smartphone is a big sensor system. It has so many sensors integrated to that. I don't know how many of you are available, how many of you are aware of the sensors. Right? Can anyone tell what are the sensors you know that are with the smartphones? What are the sensors?
Accelerometer.
Yeah, accelerometer. Very good. Yeah.
Light sensor.
Light sensing, light sensing, accelerometer, gyroscope, magnetometer, touch screen, that's a touch sensor, camera is also a sensor. Right, so if you see that, right, your smartphone is enough, right, with so many sensors. Pardon? Did anyone ask any question or make a comment? I missed. Okay, so the sensor system is a very complex system in in a mobile phone or a smartphone, and that itself that can be an input to your robo, where you can make your robo work. Right. The third point is that, right, so new building blocks keep engineers from having to start from the scratch. Right. Nowadays, there are blocks available. Right. You don't need to buy individual component, discrete sensors or components, and then put them, wire them, and connect them. Instead, you can buy a building block and build your robot. And making prototype is much easier. There is a lot of support. There is a lot of open source available. Right. The software, robotic operating system, is an open source software which is widely used for building many of the robots. Right. So let us look at some of the top robotic startup companies in India. Few of them I mentioned here. So Asimo Robotics is in Kerala. They concentrate on robotic simulation and control, machine vision, training. They have some robots to train students or people in some work like plumbing, etc. They have a virtual reality and navigation applications. They build robots that can move and do some work. Then Shastra Robotics, this startup builds and delivers robotic solutions for human-like automated functional testing. Right? It is like they develop a robotic arms, right, for performing certain operations or functions. That is their main product. Then Systematics, this they concentrate, they focus on industrial robotics. Right? So that it is most like a automation rather than the robotics. It is more into automation. Then the startup is a gray orange, which creates robots for warehousing and automation. Right. So they have the robots that can go through. Say, for example, if you have a cloth company, export company where you stitch clothes and export, you need a lot of interaction because you need to keep collecting the clothes that are stitched complete. You need to deliver the pieces, the cloth pieces to be stitched. So much of work involved. So the robots can take care of those things. That is by the gray orange. You might have heard about the Mukunda Foods. They make they made the world's first automatic dosa making machine. They call it as a robo, and that is a great hit. That can make 50 dosas per hour. Then the Inventor Robotics, they are into humanoid robots. Right? They made this 5 foot tall Mitra robo that was displayed in 2017 Global Entrepreneurship Summit, where it welcomed our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi. All right, so these are some of the startups. They are making good work, right? So and also good products. Right. So now what I am going to do is, so this is Megara Robotics. That is the second startup. The first startup was already closed long back. So this is the second startup. Right. So that came out of the lab, which is the Megara Robotics. Right. So that is some of the core areas in which we are working are robotics for humanity, rehabilitation robotics, agriculture robotics, technology for precision agriculture, improved healthcare, and also technical internship, all right, to train people into advanced robotic technologies. So with this, I'll go to the humanitarian technology labs and see how we train the students so that they learn many things. They learn research, they learn paper writing, they learn about participating in competition, all right? They learn about writing proposal for funding, all right? So that we prepare them in towards an entrepreneur, all right? So this is the first year what we do with the students, all right? When they join the engineering first year, this is the mentoring model, right? So what we do is at the end of the first semester, during the first semester vacation is where we start. We start with some workshops, seminars, all right, project camps for the students, first year students, right? So we create an interest in them, right? The interest is more when they actually build something, when they look and learn something, right? So all these workshops, seminars, project camps, at the end of these camps, we distribute prizes, cash prizes, which can be used for building some projects. Well, it's not a hi-fi project. It might be already there, built by somebody else. That is okay. But still, we encourage them to build something, right? So what we do is during the second semester, we have several discussions with these participants of the workshops, seminars, and project camps, and discuss about some possible projects that they might work on or that they are interested. And then we ask them to submit a project proposal, 3 months to 6 months project. And then maybe top 5 entries or top 8 entries, we will fund them up to 10,000 rupees to or even more, depending on the complexity of the project, because these are all 3 months to 6 months projects, right? And they can reimburse after they build successfully their projects and show some output. It's not successfully building. It's how much interest they show and how much they were able to bring an outcome into what they build, right? And that is going to happen. Actual project building will start during the summer. So these batches of students, 6 to 8 batches of students, will get a special training during the summer. We will teach them how to build the project, so they can learn how to do a project, because that is a very, very significant thing. Most of the universities, right, we leave them to students. If they are interested, they build something, right, and through that way they learn something. That is one way. I'm not complaining about that, but what we think the best way is to teach them how to do a project, right? So that is one of the best ways. We found out that they can learn a lot, the outcome will be better, they can finish the project within a certain time. All these things can happen when you teach them how to do the project. Now, we also start them, right, in research training, right? So how to make a project as a research project, right? And teach them how to write a paper. Now you can look how many workshops we have conducted, right? At the end of the first semester, more than 85 workshops, seminars, project camps have been conducted so far. And we have given prizes, cash prize worth of about 5,000 US dollars. And in all this, about 10 years, about 120 teams of students have submitted the project proposals, and we have funded about 25,000 US dollars, right, in these 10 years for supporting the student projects. Right, and 51 teams have worked on these projects so far. Now we go to the second year, right? So they will start working on the project, the proposed project that got accepted for the funding, right? And also because we taught them how to do the project, we have taught them how to do the research, we encourage them to start writing the papers, right? And submit for a review by a panel of committee members in HUT labs. Right. So far in the third semester alone, right, we were successfully able to publish 50 research papers in all these 10 years or more, right? The lab came into picture at Formal 1, 2002, but we started working with the bachelor students as early as 2006. Right. So now you can see that during the second year, we also trained them to write the project proposal. So this is a significant factor that is going to contribute to the entrepreneurship later, because you need to propose something when you want to begin or build a startup. Right. So the students learn how to write a project proposal, and we also prepare them for the competitions. The competition is one of the best way to compare what they build, right? Because otherwise, if they don't go and see outside what others are doing, they will think that they have done a great job. It will lead to a complacency, right? So we encourage a lot of the students to take part in the competitions, to take their projects, mainly the robots, to these competitions and see where they stand and compare how the others have done. Learn from what others are doing. So it gives a good opportunity for them to take part in the competitions, to measure themselves where they are. Right. So we prepare them for the competitions. Right. And at the end of the second year, many students team start registering for the competitions, even participate in the competition. So more than 15 teams have done it so far. And 100 students have traveled to present their research work outside the country, right? It's like they take part in very good conferences. We don't allow them in any other conference other than IEEE or Springer or ACM. Right, there are so many conferences, right? You all know various a degree of a level of quality in these conferences. So we will not allow them if the paper is not accepted in a IEEE or Springer or ACM conference, right? And these students have got opportunities to travel to Singapore, Japan, Malaysia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, in Asian countries, in Europe, France, Germany, Austria, even US. 2 times students went to present their work. One of their work got the best paper award also in US, best poster award. Right. So that is what happens during the second year. So now the third year is again, we start with a major project. This is when we start the major project. So most in my experience, like till 2010, 2012, students tend to start a major project even in the second year or even in the first year without learning much about how to do the project. Right. So they spend a lot of time learning so many things, and they are frustrated because they don't see output very quickly, because bachelor students, when you compare the maturity, right, with the master students or PhD students, their maturity level is very less. They are very restless. They want everything to be done very quickly, and they easily get fed up when they don't see the results quickly. So we don't allow them to start a major project unless they have undergone this training in the second year. Right. So the third year is a good time to start a major project because they will get a 2-year window, right, to complete a project. So that is the time when we start the major project. So they will continue with their research and they will keep writing the papers. And there is also another significant thing that we do is prepare them for higher studies. Right? It's not only in entrepreneurship we train them, we also train them to go for higher studies by taking up competitive exams. Right? And now you can see during the third year we start training them in journal papers. Right? So we teach them how a journal paper is different from a conference paper, what all things that they need to look, how much they have to put effort, how much work they have to do to come up with a journal paper. Right. So that is one other thing that happened during the third year. And then writing proposals and submitting proposals. Right. So that also happens during the third year. And they will continue, even third year, they will continue with going to attend the competitions. Now you can see the outcome here in the second year also, in the third year also, we have like about 50 publications. Then more than 100 students travel to present their research work. Then 100 students or more took up the competitive exams for higher studies. And you can see the third year is the major funding that we got from the IEEE, right? 17 funded projects so far and more than $50,000 in funding from the IEEE alone. And in the third year, about 20 teams took part in various competitions. So that is about the third year. Right now, let us look at the final year. So they continue with the humanitarian. So final year is continuation of most of the things they did in the second and third year. Right. The only change you would see is they would start applying for masters. They would start applying for entrepreneurships. They would start writing for the journal papers. So that are the major difference. So other things, they continue with their research publications, writing conference papers, writing journal papers, and participating in competitions. So more than 60 research papers or publications in the final year, and 40 students travel outside the country to present their paper. And you can see the count of the master's program that the students took up in US. 65 students or more have completed their masters in US. These are students who have been trained in Hut Labs, right? That are completed and they are working in very good companies like Intel, then NVIDIA, TI, Cisco, major companies, right, in US. And you can see 15 journal papers we have published. Some of them are good IEEE journals also, right? So 2 startups, so 2 student teams successfully were able to, so under my mentorship, right, the startups, 2 startups came out of this. So this is how, right, we train the students and made some significant achievements, right? So now we are going to look into some of the projects that got funded that by IEEE or various other resources. Many of these projects or all of these projects won some award or some recognition in one way or other. They have won competitions at global level. Significant publications came out of some of these projects. All right, and we will see some of the videos. These are all very short videos, so maybe a couple of minutes or even lesser. I think only one video is more than 2 minutes. All right, so let us go through this. So before we go through this video demo, I would like to introduce this project. This is the unmanned robotic coconut tree climber, right? This we started in 2013, right? Because unlike the robots you build that are going to operate on the ground, right? Where you have a freedom to choose the size of the robo, the weight of the robo. That is the first thing for the robots operated on the ground. They may be mobile or immobile robo, it doesn't matter. You still have the freedom to choose the size and the weight. The second thing is the stability. Because you are able to choose the size, the robo can operate in a very stable manner. And the third one is they all operate in a known environment. Well, some navigational robo might operate in an unknown environment, but most of the industrial robo, right, most of them operate in a known environment. Now, if you come back to this robotic coconut tree climber, right, the first thing is the size. You don't have a freedom to choose a size. Second thing is the weight. You cannot have a heavy robo, then it will be very difficult to go up. Right? The third factor, the most important factor, is the unknown environment in which the robo has to operate. Not on the ground, but somewhere 10 meters, 12 meters high on the ground. Right? Because each coconut tree is unique in the world. And each coconut bunch is unique in the world. Right? So these two are really, really great factors when it comes to tree climbing robots, particularly coconut tree climbing robots. So that is the reason we are working for so many years. And this is the 12th prototype, which is close to product. Right? That is successfully that we have built. So you can see the video now. Let me know if you have any issue with the sound.
There is an acute shortage in coconut tree climbers. This affects the income of the farmers in a huge way. In addition, this leads to the price hike of the coconuts and coconut products, affecting the consumers. For example, in Kerala, there are 180 million coconut trees and 50,000 trained climbers are required. In reality, there are only 7,000 trained climbers available according to the state's economics and statistical department data. The situation is same in all states of India and most of the Southeast Asian countries that produce coconut. Currently, there are different mechanical climbers available in the market in which the user has to go up with the machine for harvesting. We propose Amaran coconut tree climber and harvester to solve this problem. Amaran consists of ground station, climber and harvester, in which the ground station has a controlling device. The climber can be fastened to the tree with a spring mechanism. The climber is provided with a gate which can be removed while fastening the climber to the tree and then attached again. The circuit box attached to the gate consists of power management and control circuits required for Amaran. A Kinova 6DOF robotic arm with a customized electric cutter is used as the harvester. Using track motion, we are increasing the workspace of the harvester. Single 240 volt AC supply is required for the entire system.
So that is about this project. All right. We have 3 patents applied and 1 patent is already approved. And this is one of the project that was chosen by the Amrita TBI to fund for the new startup Megara Robotics. And we have won several awards also for this project. All right, OMRG 2016. in Singapore, and this is in India, Raha 2016. Right. So now we will go to Mudra. Mudra is a wheelchair robot to carry the patients, particularly patients with spinal cord injury or stroke, and also elders who are having difficulty in mobility. Right. So we came up with this is we also have applied for the patent, because what we found out, what the powered wheelchairs that you see in the market in India, they all come with a single interface, a joystick interface to control the wheelchair. But this joystick interface is not suitable for all users. For operating the joystick, you need to apply some pressure, and your hand should be healthy to a comfortable level. But if you take care of spinal cord injury patients or stroke patients or elders, right, some of the elders, the hands, right, they don't have a very strong hands, right? Whereas in the Mudra, you can see we developed a user interface, right, where they can rest their hand and move their hand. So hand gestures are captured, and then they can control the wheelchair. Right, so let us see the video.
Think about a person with disability in motion. Imagine how his life would be. It is impossible to lead a normal life. Such people are completely at the mercy of others. Many systems, but many problems. Most of the powered wheelchairs are joystick based, but not comfortable for all users. HutLab presents a novel solution, Mudra. Mudra means hand gesture.
Here in Amrita University, our team is trying to bring in this
Smooth surface of G-Pad. It is made with infrared sensors, so it is cost effective. The other option is the Android app developed in our lab.
So we also
This can be installed in any tablet or smartphone with Android OS. The users need not pay extra for this HCI. The user can place a finger or hand over the touchscreen and swipe as per the app GUI. A caretaker, either nurse at hospital or a relative at home, can also use this app-based HCI. A patient at hospital can be easily transported because of this feature. Patients at hospital or people who require wheelchair at airports can be easily transported without the need for physical pushing. It's not an end. It's an ongoing research process. Expect more.
Okay, so before I go to the next video demo, right, what do you think? What are the sensors used in these two projects? You saw the robotic coconut tree climber, and you saw the Mudra, the hand gesture based wheelchair. So can anyone tell what are the sensors used in the robotic coconut tree climber? Right. Okay. So that is one thing. The first thing is the camera that we fix with the robotic arm, right? And the robotic arm has a torque sensor, a current sensor, in order to see that all the degrees of freedom the actuators at all the degrees of freedom are working fine. So otherwise, we did not have the sensor for the climber. The harvester is the significant part, right? So that is what with the robotic coconut tree climber. But if you take Mudra, we use the IR sensors for creating the G-pad, right? You would have seen in the video, the person was placing the hand over a small prototype box, right? That has an array of IR sensors, not array, a few IR sensors to detect the presence or the absence of the hand, and a photodiode to detect the IR radiations. So that is also another sensor. And we also fix the ultrasonic sensors in order to find the obstacle so that accidentally the person does not go and hit. So these are some of the sensors that is used in these two projects. Now, what about the actuators? What do you think? What are the different kinds of actuators used in these two robots? Right, the actuators would be geared DC motors we used in the robotic coconut tree climber, right, earlier. But geared DC motors, they give a very good torque, but they don't give a good speed. So instead of DC geared motors, we used AC geared motors. Then we have the BLDC motors in the robotic arm. All right, that each of the degree of freedom has a BLDC motors. Then the cutter, right, that also we use the BLDC motor. Now coming to the wheelchair, the actuators as the moving the wheelchair, that is we use the PMDC motor, permanent magnet DC motor, because the huge load they can support, they can go at a nominal speed also, and their durability is very high. They can last for like 8 years to 10 years if you use them. Right. So now we will go to the next one, the project. Right, this self-driving wheelchair. Right, you would have heard about the self-driving cars. Right, similar to that, self-driving wheelchair. Right. So once we had an opportunity to attend the IEEE Global Humanitarian Technology Conference in 2013 at the Bay Area, San Jose, California. So we had the opportunity to visit the Google Museum. We saw, the first time we saw the Google car, right, the self-driving car, and that was the motivation. Then we thought, okay, why can't we, because we already had started work on the Mudra. So one thing that I want to mention here is that these projects are not completed within 1 year or a single batch of students, right? But these were the effort and outcome of several years of work by the groups of bachelor students, right? We did not complete them within a year or within 2 years. So a group of students will work on the project, take it to a level, and by that time their 4 years will be over, so they will leave. Then the next group of students come and then continue with the project, and that is how we were able to successfully build all this. So that I want to mention. So coming back to the selfie, right? So we started in 2014, right, around that period, right? But you know, right, bachelor students, it's not easy to get the job done, work done, right? So in 2018 only we successfully came out with the first self-driving wheelchair in India and third in the world. Right, so let us see the short video demo.
The self-driving cars are nowadays trying to make people's lives easier. But the technology can also be extended to wheelchairs for helping the people with mobility issues. The interest came out after investigating the people who depend on wheelchairs and wheelchair pushers to travel from one place to another in an airport. We realized that people with mobility issues face a lot of difficulties in their day-to-day travel and most of the times have to depend on a second person. Our self-driving wheelchair, Self-E, can change the way the society looks into the wheelchairs. Self-E system has 3 phases. In the first phase, the wheelchair is driven through the environment where it has to operate and creates a map of the environment. A similar map is created in the Android application that we developed, where the user can point to the destination that he or she decides to travel to. Once the destination is pointed through the app, Self-E Wheelchair plans the shortest path and moves the wheelchair towards the destination. The hardware equipment we use consists of a single laser scanner. This laser scanner can identify the environment and also moving objects like we do. The onboard software automatically reroutes the path while avoiding any sudden obstacles in its path. Our self-driving wheelchair, Self-E, is fully operated using any Android-enabled device like smartphone or a tablet. The users have 3 different modes to operate Self-E: manual, auto, and fixed modes. The manual mode has easy access to the wheelchair with a simple direction interface where the user has to continuously navigate using the app. The fixed mode is used for navigating common places like shops in airports or rooms in hospitals where the destination is known in advance. In auto mode, the user can choose any destination on the provided map. The user has to just point to the desired location using the Android device and the wheelchair starts moving. Self-E can also navigate through tight spaces like passing through doors, corridors, and even getting into a lift. This autonomous technology can be used to deliver goods in industries, food in restaurants, people in airports, hospitals, at grocery shops, etc.
Okay, so can you guess what are the sensors used in this auto navigating wheelchair? Well, in the video itself, it was mentioned. Right, a laser sensor scanner is used. Right, so we use a LiDAR sensor to scan the facility. It might be a house, it might be a hall. Right, any facility has to be mapped first. So we create the map first using the LiDAR sensor. Right, and then we have the encoder, digital encoders, right, to keep track of how much the sensor, how far the wheelchair has moved, how long the wheelchair has moved. That is another thing. Apart from that, we also use accelerometer and gyro, that is IMU. We use the IMU, inertial measurement unit, to keep track of the orientation of this robot. All right, and we also have the ultrasonic sensor setup for obstacle detection. So these are the sensors, and the actuator is of course the PMDC motor, right? That is normally used in powered wheelchair. And so this is the service robo. All right, so this is a robo that is developed to help with, or to help as a caretaker for the elderly people or people with some disabilities. Right. So this was a finalist in RoboCup German Open in 2019. So we went there to present this work. So there is a short introduction.
The speech recognition for the system is done by integrating the Android speech application to the IBM Watson chatbot, where the recognized data in the application is sent as a message data to the ROS master. IBM chatbot acts as an assistant for human-robot interaction. The mapping of the environment is done by Gmapping package. This is the map of our HUT lab, which is divided into 4 different sections. Section 1, Section 2, Section 3, and Section 4. Navigation to the desired location is obtained by localizing through AMCL package and integrating it with MoveBase package. For object recognition with Kinect sensor, we are using an algorithm called YOLO, where the robot needs to be trained with different images of objects. The robot can recognize the trained objects and also gives the object midpoint coordinates with respect to the origin of Kinect sensor for pick and place purpose. In case of a person, the robot can estimate characteristics like gender and age. Currently, we are using the 6 degree of freedom Kinova arm for pick and place and for basic human-robot interaction. Here is an example of human-robot interaction where arm is used. We are currently developing a gripper to serve as an end effector for the arm to hold the objects.
Okay, so you have seen, right? It's already mentioned in the demo. What are the sensors used? We use the Kinect sensor, right? Kinect has inbuilt 3 sensors, right? One is the camera, right? So that is to identify the object. If it's a human, face recognition and the body recognition, right? And it also uses the depth sensor to find out how far the object is. That is similar to the LiDAR, right? And there is also this third sensor, that is the mic. It can recognize voices and all. So that is what is used in this one. That is a sensor system. Kinect is a sensor system in itself. So other than that, there are touch sensors in the manipulator arm, right? And also you saw that the Kinova arm is used, which has torque sensor and current sensor inbuilt into that. And this robo is also like complex in the sense that this also should auto navigate. So it has a LiDAR sensor also, right? So you can see that this is much more complex than the wheelchair, right? That you saw, either self-driving or the hand gesture based wheelchair, because it has to interact with the patient. It has to recognize the voice. It has to recognize the person, right? And accordingly interact with people. So in that sense, it is much more complex, right? So that is about this this robo, the service robo. The next one is the search and rescue robo. This robo is also one of the finalists in the RoboCup German Open 2 years consecutively, 2018 and 2019. And this robo also was the finalist in World Robo Summit in Tokyo, Japan in 2018. So we have 3 versions of this robo. You can see in this video all the 3 versions. This is the first version. So this is during the the second version. Look. So this is testing in the lab. This is due to the competition. During the 2019 competition. So this also comes with a range of sensors and a sensor system similar to the service system. Right, except it does not connect with high voltage. Right, because the robo is heavy. Right, and the design is also complex in the sense that we need to do analysis for stability because it has to perform tasks like climbing the stairs and all. So if you don't design properly, the robo might tip over. And it also fixed with the robotic arm to perform operations. So these competitions, actually, they are like a professional competitions, right? We were the only teams with the bachelor students. There were so many companies which brought their robo and all. So as I mentioned earlier, these competitions give really a good insight. The students learn a lot, right, from these the companies that come, the professors, the students are all like if some university come, they are like a PhD student group. They come for take part in the competition. Right, so it was a very good exposure for the students to learn many things. All right, so now, as Professor mentioned, this is the Robo Army that we developed in the this was developed like 3 months back or even 4 months back itself, right, to cater the situation, to handle the situation that arose due to the COVID. Right, so this is a food and drug delivery robo, right? So you can see a very short video on this. So this can carry food or medicine, or even we can have a telemedicine facility. If you fix a just fixing your tablet or phone, that is also possible. Annapurna is a tele-operated robot developed at Humanitarian Technology Labs, Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering at Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham. This robot can be remotely operated by the operator or the nurse to serve food, drinks, and medicine to the patients in the isolation wards. This way, the nurse or the operator need not come in direct contact with the patients in the isolation wards. This robot can be built and assembled within few weeks, and it comes at a very cheaper rate of less than 25,000 rupees. So this can also be used in restaurants, right? Not only in hospitals. This also has. So here, if you look at the sensors, right, it is only the Bluetooth sensor module for the teleoperation that is used. It is not a very complex. It's very simple. You need only 2 actuators and some mechanical design. A proper mechanical design is what is needed. Now, this is one of the very super hit robo because now several of these units already deployed in Amrita Institute of Medical Sciences. This is also currently used in our university because it is expected to reopen to sanitize all the hostel rooms, to sanitize the office area of our university, right? So we are building 8 of them now, right, currently. So let us see what is this about. Prabha is an ultraviolet disinfectant robot which can be remotely operated and controlled. This robot has 3 powerful ultraviolet lamps at 55 watts and can disinfect a room of 12 feet by 12 feet within less than an hour. This also has a upgraded version which can have 6 lamps at 55 watts each lamp and can disinfect the room of 12 feet by 12 feet within less than 30 minutes. Because it's remotely operated, there is no need for the person or the operator to come into direct contact with the ultraviolet radiations which are harmful to eyes and skin. Okay, so we have few more robots, but I have not included that because we need to keep up the timing also. So particularly there is again only the Bluetooth module, Bluetooth sensor is the only thing that is used. Other than that, it's not a complex. As you saw previous all the robots, these are all very simple mechanisms being used. Right. So now I don't have a video for this. So this is also we are trying to make it as a product. This is the IoT-based crop protection system, right? And this is deployed. You can see if you go to Andhra Pradesh, right? It is in Ongole district, Sitarampur village. We deployed this during last year, November, December, right? So what happens is that in this photo you can see, right, the fence made of some old clothes, right? So this is not only a problem in this village, this is a huge problem in almost all the villages where they do agriculture, particularly paddy and some crops like vegetable or right. So the animals, particularly wild boars, deers, some buffaloes, wild buffaloes, even sometimes elephants. They attack these crops, right? They come in the night and then they eat and they destroy. They not only eat, they destroy the crops, and a significant amount of money is lost. The farmers lose a lot of money. If you take account the entire loss in the country, it runs into several hundreds of crores of rupees, right? So now what they do is they either protect their field like this, which is still vulnerable for the attack, or they kill these animals. Even elephants, they are ready to kill, even though it is illegal. They put an electric fence and kill these animals, right? So this is one of the IEEE funded project. Well, some of the I didn't remember to mention, some of the previous projects were also funded by IEEE, right? So this is funded recently, right? Last year we finished this project. So we covered about 12 acres of land. We put a fence, but made of laser, right? Like a laser fence rather than a fence with right, physical bricks or wires or something like that, right? So what we do, we have a very simple system. The laser would be, this would be switched on, the system would be switched on in the night. So when the animals cross the laser beam, right, so the system, right, the sound alert system will start making a huge sound, right, a noise. It kinds of scares away these animals. And also there will be a powerful blinking LED light, right, 45 watt. So with the light and the sound, we scare away the animals. Right, so that is what we do, and this is successfully deployed also in this village. Right, and this is one of the products that we want to promote through the Megara Robotics. Right, and there are several awards and recognitions. So that is about the video demo. Right, so as I mentioned, there are 2 startups already there. Then the Amaran was a finalist in Cisco Global Challenge, both in global and India category. Right, and HutLab, we came up with many firsts in India: unmanned robotic coconut reclaimer, self-driving wheelchair, IoT-based crop protection system, and all. So there are several medals, prizes, awards, recognitions. Right. So it's not 8 patents, it's 11 patents so far, and one patent approved. Right, and then India Embedded Challenge, Intel Challenge, Jockey, Innovation Jockey, then Mental Graphics Contest, Poster Contest, right, Best Paper Awards. And you can see we also won 8 Richard E. Merwin Scholarship Awards. Not we, the students have won, right, from that lab. Right, so these are some of the photos and news. There's so many things, like I put only a few. This is participating in the conferences, right? So I already gave a brief about the competitions that the students took part. So in the robotic competition held in Singapore, NTU, we won 5 prizes. Right, there were several teams. All right, our teams also, we only 5 teams we went. All the teams won prizes. Right, so that is one of the significant thing in that competition. Then Raha contest also, 4 teams won prizes from HutLab, and we were finalists in 2018 and 2019 RoboCup German Open. Then our students won first prize in RoboCon 2018, which was held at Tokyo Tech University, and also in RoboCon 2019, which was held at MIT USA. And currently a 31-member team. Yeah, currently still all these projects are going on, but a new addition is a 31-member team working for the India Autonomous Challenge 2021, the world's first head-to-head high-speed autonomous race. It's a car race. We have to actually build a car and take it to US in Indianapolis. But I don't know how that is going to happen because that is a lot of investment. Anyhow, we are a 31-member team is already working on this project. And these are some of the competitions participation: Singapore, Germany, then Robocon Tokyo, this Robocon MIT USA, right? So these are some of the competitions. So I also mentioned about how we train the students for the master programs, internship. So some of them have done top ranking universities, including Georgia Tech, Columbia, UCLA, Las Vegas, UC Dallas, Texas, NCSU, University of Florida and all, right? And some of the European universities also. So we also encourage students to go for internship, both within India and outside India. So far, 70 students have gone for several places, including Singapore, Hong Kong, Netherlands, and all. Right. And so we also make sure that, right, we meet with all the students who worked at Hut Lab. So that is a very good way, right? Because these students are eager to contribute back to Hut Labs in some way or other, and these kind of meet help in several ways, whether it is supporting their juniors, projects, supporting the startup, helping with some work in helping with finalizing the project proposal. So many ways the alumni help us. And this is only few, right, in these many years. So now coming back to Megara Robotics, right, this within 6 months, we were the finalists in Cisco Global Challenge 2020, both in global and India categories. We also won the most promising startup award from Atmanirbhar India AI Challenge 2020 by Government of India. And the recent one is we are listed as one among the Tech 30 startup 2020 in India, right, by Your Story. Your Story is one of the most famous agency which conducts this tech sparks for deciding the Tech 30 company startups. Right, so when you are thinking about entrepreneurship and startup and all, there are 5 things that you should know, all right, do's and don'ts, right? So the first one is don't rush to build your robots, right? Because unlike software, right, say you are developing an app, you had some problem, a major issue, go and redo the app. Another major issue, another issue, go and fix the issue, right? Now take a robo, you build a robo, you invested so much of money, right? Compared to the app, you don't need to invest anything to develop an app. You need a laptop that you anyhow have already, right? But when you want to build a robo, the investment is too much. You cannot iterate. You cannot think of iterating it. You cannot think of making a major error and start rebuilding entirely another robo. So you have to consider so many factors, right? You have to do proper study, proper research before you do the robos. Engage with your customer early, right? Because it might bring you a bad name if your robo is having some problem, and that might spread and affect your prospects, right? So many startup, what they do is they underestimate, right, and even trivialize about their products, right? Introducing their products, right? So if not properly made, and if you engage with your customer at a very early stage of the development of the product before even completion, you might even lose the market itself. The third one is don't rely on clever design as a differentiator. Right? It might be a very, very clever design. So many things, intelligent design. So you should not get into complacency that it would be a successful one. Right? You need to study properly. You need to study the market. You need to get mentorship because you are a startup. Remember, you are a beginner. So make sure that you get a guidance from some. Then the fourth one is do understand the economics of the target customer and business. When you decide on building a robo, the pricing is very, very important. Right? So people, and it also depends on the area, the region you focus. Particularly if you take at the Southeast Asian countries, the cost is really, really important. Whereas in Europe and US, cost is secondary. How good your product is going to work. People will be ready to pay even an extra buck, but yours must be the topmost product. Right, and finally, you have the don't go it alone. Get to know your ecosystem. Again, this is about the mentorship, right, among the already existing companies, well-established robotic companies, customers, some companies which are not robo manufacturers, but they are customers for these. For example, Walmart, if you take, they use so many robots, but they don't make the robots. Similarly, there are many other chain shops which engage robo, but they don't build the robo. So the input from these companies would be really, really valuable. So know your ecosystem. Right. So these are the 5 do's and don'ts which I came across in IEEE Spectrum magazine long back. So I thought that would be very relevant for the entrepreneurs. I think we have come to the end of the lecture. So I think that's it for today. So if there is, I think there is still some time for question and answers. So if you have some questions, I would be happy to answer.
I would request all participants to ask queries. Any queries, please ask.
I think power off, so you might not see it's a dark face here.
Yogendra Rathore. Yogendra Rathore. Mr. Yogendra. Any queries, please? Any question, please? Mr. Bhupati K might have raised his hand. If you have any queries, you can ask. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for such an enlightening and informative session. It is a very exciting talk, and really you are doing a challenging job.